Dobrze, proszę Państwa, myślę, że możemy zaczynać. So we can start, I think. So let me once again welcome you at this panel. I am Małgorzata Bonikowska from the Center for International Relations, which is the partner of Warsaw Security Forum since the very beginning. And this is obviously not the first time we discuss this subject. It's one of the most important subjects we are focusing on in our center. Everything which is connected with information threats, hybrid threats, much larger, and hybrid wars, and especially special attention we give to the fake news, disinformation, misinformation as a field of activities in different contexts. And the panel today, we would like to discuss its specific consequences of this new reality we are all facing for the society, for the public sphere, for the political sphere in the West. So once again, thank you for your time and for the fact that you join us. And let me welcome your guests today, which I hope this group of people will allow you to really discuss this phenomenon from a different angles. Let me first invite to the floor Mrs. Anna Popescu, our guest from Romania, director of the Global Focus Center. It's a think tank, Romanian think tank, which does foreign affairs, but which specializes actually in the same domain as we do. Yes, please sit along the alphabet, actually, we put the people. And along the alphabet, except for the woman, ladies always first. Then I invite the other panelists. Mr. Jerzy Pomianowski, my colleague, formerly from the Foreign Ministry of Poland, now Executive Director of European Endowment for Democracy. Welcome. With headquarters in Brussels, but Jerzy is, here and there, and I hope he will also give us some feedback from the observations he can take from the countries for which European Endowment Fund was created. Actually, this was the initiative of Poland to have this fund for neighborhood countries. Mr. Jakub Turowski. Jakub is the head of Facebook. Facebook operates globally, but he covers Poland and the Baltic countries. Thank you, Jakub, for joining us today. Facebook has a wonderful office in Warsaw and a nice space also. I hope we will be able to use for wider discussions, especially on this subject, as I don't need to tell you how deeply Facebook is engaged in this subject. And finally, Mr. Andrzej Zybertowicz. Professor Zybertowicz, thank you very much for joining us. It's advisor of the President of Poland. Panie profesorze, zapraszamy do dyskusji. I hope we will be able to do the discussion in English. If there is any translation needed, please take the hands-free from behind. Can we do it all in English, I guess? That's what we can do. Okay, first of all, let me show you what we really want to discuss the most, because it's worrying us the most, which is a relatively new phenomenon called deep fake. It's not only about misinformation, not only about disinformation, but now it's really about reality. Completely false, which can be put on the net already. And next year, it's election year, so let's see what we will face having such technology. So can I please, czy można poprosić o pokazanie filmu?
Jordan Peele created this fake video of President Obama to demonstrate how easy it is to put words in someone else's mouth.
Moving forward, we need to be more vigilant with what we trust from you.
Not everyone bought it, but the technology behind such frauds is rapidly improving, even as worries increase about their potential for harm. This is your Bloomberg Quick Take on deepfakes. Deepfakes, or realistic-looking fake videos and audio, gained popularity
as a means of adding famous actresses into porn scenes. Despite bans on major websites, they remain easy to make and find. They're named for the deep learning artificial intelligence algorithms that make them possible. Input real audio or video of a specific person, the more the better, and the software tries to recognize patterns in speech and movement. Introduce a new element like someone else's face or voice, and a deepfake is born.
It's actually extremely easy to make one of these things. There were just some supposed, breakthroughs from academic researchers who work with this particular kind of machine learning in the past few weeks, which would drastically reduce the amount of video you need actually to create one of these.
Programs like BREAKOUT, the most popular and widely available for making deepfakes, need dozens of hours of human assistance to create a video that looks like this, rather than this. In August, researchers at Carnegie Mellon revealed software that accurately rendered not just facial features, but changing weather patterns, and flowers in bloom. This advance is not yet available to the public, but with increasing capability comes increasing concern.
This is kind of fake news on steroids, potentially. We do not know of a case yet where someone has tried to use this to perpetrate a kind of fraud or an information warfare campaign, or for that matter, to really damage someone's reputation. But it's the danger that everyone is really afraid of.
In a world where fakes are easy to create, authenticity also becomes easier to deny. People caught doing genuinely objectionable things could claim evidence against them is bogus. Fake videos can also be difficult to detect, though researchers around the world and at the US Department of Defense have said they're working on ways to counter them. Deep fakes do, however, have some positive uses. Take Cyberwarfare, a firm that creates digital voices for people who lose theirs from disease.
Speech synthesis is the artificial production of human speech.
There are also applications that could be considered either good or bad, like the many, many deepfakes that exist solely to turn as many movies as possible into Nicolas Cage movies.
Myślę, że możemy tutaj zakończyć, jeśli można. The film is longer, but I think you've got the message, right? So actually, the problem we are facing, it's unlike we've discussed last year and 2 years back. It's not so much about what exists as far as how people behave, but what exists as far as technology is offering us, and what bad people, countries, or some organizations can do with this technology to confuse us, and what results this will have on our states, on our mentality, on our public discussions. So this is the thing we want to discuss today. And the first question, my first question would go to our friend from Romania, to Ona. I would like to ask you how, because you are analyzing this whole, let's call it market. We do the same. Center for International Relations implements several projects in this domain. What is your understanding about really the threat? How much we can really expect? How dangerous, in your opinion, this may be?
Well, not sure if, this is on. For once, I have to trust scientists, because I still do, although that's going out of trend, trusting expertise. But experts say it's still cheaper to detect, to use machines to detect deep fakes and fake in reality in general than it is to produce it. So we still have a kind of a window of opportunity until these fakes become really hard to detect. On the other hand, I'm actually, and I know
you are saying, if I correctly understood, that the technology is not that advanced and it's too expensive to use it
not at this point,
right?
Not at this point, but it's changing very fast. So it's definitely the reality of tomorrow, and not of the day after tomorrow, but of tomorrow. But there's another thing that actually worries me more. People are going to be, I think, increasingly aware of the fact that they cannot really trust everything that they see. You would tend to think that's a good thing, because if you become more skeptical, then you tend to exercise critical thinking, and it's good if people understand that you cannot just trust everything that you see. But we've carried out a study in Romania, Bulgaria, Moldova, and Georgia, which actually shows the following. A lot of people in these countries, and not just in these countries, but we have been exposed to communist propaganda, we have been exposed to pre-communist propaganda, and so on. We distrust politicians. Political institutions are at an all-time low in terms of confidence. We know we cannot trust what we hear. We know we cannot trust politicians. We know we cannot trust the media. That's actually one of the big problems, that people think they cannot trust anything, any of the, let's say, official institutions of democracy. And so what happens is they give up on the rational process of trying to make sense of what's around. And when that happens, this leads to those bubbles that we speak so much about, where people have a feeling of belonging, and based on emotional reactions, not on reason. So my fear is the more we're going to have deep fakes and the more people are going to be aware of the fact that they cannot really trust anyone around, especially not any legitimate official voice, they're going to be more and more tempted to believe the fringe voices, the unofficial ones, the informal ones, the conspiracy theories, and everything they're being fed in ways where people come and they appear empathetic and they say, we understand what's happening to you. We know you don't trust anyone. We know you feel betrayed by government, by media. We're here to help you. So that's what I'm worried about.
Actually, this recalls the statement our friend from Ukraine did last year during this discussion at the forum, that he said that his understanding is that he's also running a think tank in similar field, that in Ukraine people cannot trust really any official media, so they just don't care what is true, what is false, because they don't expect anything actually to be true, but they look for some emotions. They take the messages emotionally, and what they trust much more is the friend, the information from somebody who can trust, so a human being who delivers some message. Well, that's a big challenge to the state. And I would like to ask Professor Zybertowicz now, from your perspective, you are an academician, but you are also working with the Polish president, and you have the overview of what is going on in our society. I would like to ask you, from this perspective, what can be done at the state level, at the institutional level, to keep the truth, to keep the beliefs of the people with the structures, with the state, with the institutions we already have?
My first instinct is to turn this question over to my neighbor.
That will happen in a minute.
And of course, neither of sides, nor tech giants, and the state authorities cannot obtain clearing the situation out without cooperation. But the problem is, if we go to the cutting edge of the problem, how much regulation is necessary to regain a space of truth-obtaining processes, how much of regulation we need in regard to the digital in general.
Is this really the right word, regulations? Because we were thinking more about, the truth, the trust, the connection.
The point is that it was noticed probably some 2 years ago that we don't have fake news problem, we have reality problem. That people lost touch with reality.
But along President Trump, and also shared by President Duda, with whom you work, there is a big problem with fake news. And also a lot of media, seem like not to be favorable to the politicians. So among all this chaos we have in the media now, everything we have normal coverage, we have disinformation.
I think that we have unrealistic imagination of truth. There is an axiom which is often forgotten, that the truth cannot prevail without some weaponry. that this religious vision that the truth has its own shining that's enough to prevail, absolutely is not correct. If our institutions cannot support the truth searching process, truth is eliminated from social life.
But if this is the case, how we can visualize our social life? If there is no truth, everything is false. So we will be living in Matrix? That's what you are saying?
Absolutely. If you ask brain researchers, neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, they would say human mind is not a machine devised to search for truth. It's a machine which is designed to survive.
And that's a very interesting statement from, well, we can say you are a politician now. The truth doesn't matter. It's important how people visualize.
No, it matters, but not to such a scope as we would be happy to teach our children.
Okay, let's turn to Facebook and let's see what the provider of one of the most important tools, also for the politicians, but for all of us. I guess everybody almost uses Facebook still, because there is also a rumor that the younger generation doesn't do it so eagerly. What can we do, what can you do actually to provide, to distinguish the false information from the fake one?
Right, thank you very much. So this is a question I think I could talk during like 2-3 hours at least. So I'll try to be concise. Well, obviously with Facebook, it's been like 2-3 years. It's really on top of the agenda, and we do realize the responsibility of platforms and of tech companies in ensuring the integrity of the elections and in ensuring quality information on our platform. That said, it's also important, I think, when opening the debate, to say that misinformation is not something that is related to Facebook, is not something that is related to the internet, is something that has always existed somehow, right? Now, the question is, what is new? And I believe that what is new is definitely the scale of the phenomenon. The fact that with digital tools, we all became journalists, we all became people who create content. And this indeed is something new. And also you have the polarization of the society that we all see for many years. Now the question is, what's first, the egg or the chicken, right? And here I guess we will not be we will not necessarily agree. Now, to answer your question, what do we do to fight with this phenomenon? We, of course, and I will develop on this in a second, develop a lot of tools. But, and this is also super important, we do have to understand that, and I will quote my CEO, we are in an arms race. There will be
arms race.
In an arms race. In every technology, you will always have the bad guys who will be willing to misuse the technology that we have. And this is, I think, even though I will develop on all the efforts that we do and that we will continue to do, and the fact that we want to engage with all the stakeholders who want to help us on this, this is, I think, an important starting point. We are in an arms race, and we will always have bad guys who will try to misuse a tool, because Facebook at the end of the day is only a tool. This said, our philosophy when it comes to fighting fake news really can be kind of resumed in 3 words. First of all, we do remove. We remove content that is not aligned with our community standards. And also, and this is, I think, a key element, we have noticed, seen, that a lot of the fake news are often generated by fake accounts, fake pages, fake profiles. And this is where our real name policy is very important. Unlike on other platforms, on Facebook, you are supposed to use the tool with your real name and your real, with your real first name and real last name. And whenever it's seen, recognized that we deal with a fake account, the account is removed. and so is the page that is related to the account. And what is new here is that still a few years ago, the only real way to find a fake account, a fake profile, it was reporting from our users. So it was super reactive. And today, we see an immense growth of how we use AI and machine learning to find these fake accounts and to proactively remove them from the platform. So we remove content. Then we reduce the reach of some kind of content. Basically, what we've seen is that a lot of that is fake news related is financially motivated. So it's like all these clickbait pages, the Tina Turner is dead pages. And we have a lot of tools to see these pages, to recognize these pages, and to downrate in the news feed so that less people see this content and more people see quality content.
And can I ask you here, if you can tell us, of course, Facebook is a huge organization, but earlier I understand there was no one really who was engaged in the company into this field. Now you hire people who specially only work somehow on this subject, fake news. How many people in the company now work on this problem, if you can tell us?
I think it's unfair to say that we never we did not deal with it before, but that's true that this tool is definitely higher on the agenda than it was 2-3 years ago. It's hard for me to say how many people work exactly on fake news, but we have announced a few months ago that we will hire additionally 10,000 people working on all that is security related, which includes the topic we discuss here. And so with this and with the growing impact of AI and of technology to fight the bad guys, we really hope to be able to enter into a battle in which we will be in a good position.
I'm asking also because we are fighting constantly here with our people, with our network in the public institutions and in the government to increase number of people engaged in the administration in the problem of misinformation and information war as such. And we are very unhappy still that there are not so many really people at the public level to fight against this this phenomenon, both at the national level. In Poland, I don't think there is any structure in the government who really deals with this. And in other countries, there are very, very few, at least in our region, in Central Eastern Europe, because in some Western countries like the UK, France, after the elections, or just before the elections especially, it was much more interest into this phenomenon. In Czech Republic also there is some little structure, but I think here in Poland we are still missing that. At the European level, we started something, but comparing to your 10,000, we are very, very modest. Antoni, I don't know how many people now would work. I think 10 people now or 15 people.
But at least we have a Polish representation.
Yes. So, you know, there is this disproportion that still we are at the security forum and everybody discusses security here and all the mindset go to the military, to the hard force, hard power. And even if we discuss hybrid threats, we think mostly about cyber security. Still, this soft aspect of information, misinformation, disinformation, fake, deep fake is not really the most important thing.
If I may, it's a bit unfair, I think. I mean, the European Commission is really very much engaged into the topic, and it was last week, if I remember well, we signed a code of conduct with the EC ahead of the European elections. Here in Warsaw, the Ministry of Digital Affairs is also, you know, thinking about the phenomenon.
Thinking is already something, but not enough.
Yeah, but on the other hand, again, there will be no answer, like, you know, one-size-fits-all answer. It's really about smart people, experts sitting around the table and continuing trying to find the best weapons in a battle that I think will continue anyhow.
Maybe we should use your language. I like this language. You know, we are first time discussing this in the context of weapons, battlefield, bad guys, good guys. Thank you. Maybe we should use that. Maybe we will be heard better. What I want to also stress is that what we've learned is, first of all, that there are some algorithms which can beat bad guys. So there are those who produce bad algorithms, but you can fight them automatically doing something else. Then there is this level of not necessarily the high elaboration of these tools, what you mentioned. So we have still time to do something about it. This era of deepfake is not yet happening. It may come in the very nearest future, but still we can fight it. And then what we've learned from Professor Zybertowicz is that the truth is not necessarily, you know, the key focus of attention. I want to now ask Jerzy Pomianowski, because Jerzy was the person who was very, very important for democratization agenda, something we had in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, something I hope it's still the case in Europe, but we have more and more problems with this democratization because Europe has to deal with different political figures now. I want to ask you about your experience with democracy, building democracy, and now facing this internet chaos and fake. And mind you, Jerzy works mostly, the European Endowment Fund was created for neighborhood countries, mostly. So countries like Tunisia, where everything started because of internet, because of, it was Facebook or Twitter, I don't remember, maybe Facebook that they used to do this Arab Spring. So what is happening now, and what is your understanding? How dangerous could it be for democracy we are having?
Thanks a lot, Małgorzata. Indeed, I think we now all reached the moment when we understood that hard power and soft power, they comes together. That the hybrid threats means that people dealing with defense, they have to deal also with civil society issues, with key democratic movements, with disinformation and information media. This is a big victory, and that, for example, makes the life of my foundation much easier, because we don't have any problem attracting new funding, because that's finally what government understood. And the UK government took a whole of government approach and allocated a lot of funds to address this agenda.
Can you give us some figures, what it is?
Well, the UK government, for example, allocated more than 40 million pounds, and this is not development money. These are money that are coming from specifically for specific mechanism, that is an interagency mechanism by Foreign Ministry and some other agencies run together. Similar approach was taken by Finnish government. Similar approach now is developed in France and several other places. And to my surprise, and actually makes me happy, also a Spanish government, after Barcelona crisis, started to understand that this is not a remote issue, that it also addresses and concerns their vital interest. So in that sense, there is a huge change in understanding where we are and what the problem is. But let me come back a little bit, step back, because you asked also about democracy. I think, and I will not be far from truth, saying that the main research question remains: what internet did good or bad to democracy in general? And I haven't read till now nothing enough good, convincing, to explain me as a person who is rather running do tank than the think tank, to help understanding and to assess properly where we are with the internet impact on society, specifically on democratic society.
Yeah, because we expected at the very beginning, and I
that
think
was only positive.
Yeah, yes. Only positive. Yes. Openness, you know, access to everything. That the internet will enhance democracy.
Absolutely, and that is exactly what we understood is not the case. Then we started to blame tech companies for lack of responsibility, building new tools, which to some extent is truth, and to some extent is not. But I would like to put another important intellectual, I would say, challenge for us discussing the issue, because for me the problem, as I see it, especially dealing with the grassroots level organizations, is a twofold. First, it's issue of disinformation and the use of internet as a deliberate action by state or any other legal entity that has agenda, has a certain strategic objective, and try simply to use those mechanisms and available tools. And the second is something that we can call social and civilizational process that is happening anyway, that Professor Zybertowicz was saying that something is changing, that human brain is built in such a way that may not or will answer to those challenges in one way or another. So they are inevitable social and civilizational process. But what I'm trying to be concerned, of course, mainly I am concerned with those deliberate actions. Because the civilization processes, we will read about them 100 years later, and then we will realize how strange times we were living in, and that is going to be totally different reflection. But if someone's deliberately try to destroy something important to us, that is believing in truth or having access to truth, and wants to achieve a specific objective, that is clear and present danger. And that's exactly what Security Forum and security agencies should be concerned about at the first hand.
So if I understand correctly, there are two parallel processes. One is how to ensure security and beat bad guys, because that's what they are doing is a crime. That should be the language. And in the same time, the evolution of people, behaviors, mindset, whatever, that's also challenging.
I mean, that goes in parallel because, of course, who first discovers certain trends and jumps on this wave and serves. And this, for example, we can see easily how politicians discover what the business already discovered a long time ago, that you win election only by emotions, by selling emotions. If you look into the advertising industry and the selling products, selling on the market, we can see like from 50s through 60s to 70s, everyone understood that if you are selling Toyota, Bosch, Electrolux or Adidas, you are not explaining that my product is very good. You are selling emotion. You are selling this with sex, with memories, with whatever other element you want to sell it, but definitely not by addressing to the people's mind, but
so
addressing
democracy
to the
should be sexy.
heart.
Democracy should just
Of course,
make
it's not only
the
democracy,
feeling,
but politicians understood that it's not about truth, it's about trust. So at present, now we finally came to this conclusion that the most precious commodity is trust, not truth. So this is something...
How to build trust if there are fake news and deep fake?
That doesn't matter. In that sense, it doesn't matter, unfortunately. You can build trust without truth, and that's what Putin achieved in its own information space, which is Russian language information space, where we are trying as endowment to try to bring some more balance, some alternative debate, but it's extremely difficult simply because he was allowed over 10 to 12 years to dominate the space with its own narratives, its own messages. So in that sense, he was able to build trust. The methodology is well already described, using all kind of entertainment, all kind of emotional messaging, you know, singing old songs, showing, you know, my daughter get married, and so on. And after that, Dmitry Kiselov, who comes with his, you know, poisoning narratives and makes people's minds totally, you know, distorted. So we know how it works and how he did achieve, but he did. So we have to make sure something like this will never happen in our information space. And that is where democracy, free media, and key principles stands for. So we have to see all those processes, we have to counteract them, but at the same time we have to make distinction between deliberate action and general processes that anyway taking place.
Okay, before I give the floor to you, I just want to ask one more question to the panelists. Professor Zybertowicz, could you elaborate a little bit more? Also being an academician, how do you visualize then this kind of democracy of the future? With us, we are weak, we believe in different things, we are emotional, but we are, you know, living in democratic societies. And there will be maybe fake news, there will be maybe some companies who will try to stop it, but we will be living in a sort of a chaos. How do you visualize the Western society facing this kind of a problem from the, you know, sociological point of view, or political point of view?
It seems that dilemma is pretty simple. Either we manage the chaos or somebody will manage that so-called Western civilization for us. be it either tech giants who profit from fake news or Oriental despoties. Facebook is the most conducive to fake news ecosystem that ever existed on our planet. Facebook's success is greatly based on weaponry of addictive technologies. And these addictive technologies keep people in front of their screens. And fake news operate on the premises of these addictive technologies. Fake news are easier to understand, more sexy and more attractive and more viral. And if we don't go to the heart of the problem, and the heart of the problem this is not the issue of good guys or bad guys, it's the problem of the would-be helpless guys. For example, in the recent election, self-government election in Poland, there was a huge flow of fake news attacking one of the candidates. When the election team of the candidates contacted Facebook in Poland, they told they don't have resources here to deal with the issues, and they continued earning money from fake news and from outlets devised to spread fake news. And if we don't understand that social media are a new realm, new ecosystem that favors fake news, we cannot deal with the problem. And therefore I go back to my initial statement. Without a sort of cooperation between state regulators and tech giants, we cannot sort these things out. And if we cannot do this, one day the Chinese would come and say, listen, we have a citizen scoring system. If you employ this digital authoritarianism, you can manage with chaos.
Well, so it's a so-called asymmetric approach. There are some systems, political systems, which deal with it on different bases, and we are here, Western democracies, that we are trying to build some balance between...
The liberal democracy encouraged a huge wave of human creativity. And this creativity born tools which can be used by enemies of democracy to undermine it. The American elections and the Brexit campaign were the best examples that technologies devised in the West and delivered for free to whole mankind were used to nearly strangle the core state of the Western world, I mean the American election process.
Facebook then, please.
Yeah, I think that oversimplifying is very dangerous in this kind of very complex debates. So first of all, one quick comment about the time spent on Facebook and about the impact it can have on our societies. As crazy as it can be, I think that we agree with you. This is why, and it's been announced in January, we have changed the whole way of thinking within the company and of our algorithm, because we indeed acknowledge the fact that it's maybe important for the people to spend less time on Facebook. And we acknowledge the fact that it will have financial impact on Facebook, that people spend less time on Facebook, but they will spend quality time on Facebook. And this is also part of the battle. This is, of course, a more like a long-run approach, but we absolutely acknowledge the fact that sitting the whole day and doing like that on its phone is maybe not the most valuable thing that people can do. And from this perspective, we are fully okay with the fact that people will spend less time on Facebook, but quality time on Facebook, which means engagement and more maybe deep discussions about different topics. quick comment about the local elections, because you mentioned it, and I would like to come back to that. First of all, please be sure that this, what I would call low-quality content, does exist on both sides. And it's not only about the local election, it was also the case on some former elections that we had in Poland a few years ago. That is first comment. Second comment, we, as a company, are not in a position to answer to the question what is true or what is not true. And this is super important. And if we try to decide what is true or not true, I'm sure that a bunch of you will say, but who are these guys to decide what is true and what is not true? And this is why we enter into cooperations with what we call fact checkers, local institutions, that may be NGOs, universities, journalists, that indeed check if an information that is reported is true or not true. This said, to do so, we do want our partners to have what we call the Pointer Institute certificate, because we have to be sure this is an international certificate that really shows that the partner is of high quality to check the facts. And we want to be sure that indeed the partners we deal with in different countries are neutral enough, good enough on the substance, so that they can take these sometimes very meaningful decisions. Unfortunately, today the fact is in Poland we do not yet have such a partner, and we are discussing with some bodies to have the certificate and to enter into this process. That's true, today we don't have it. That is one thing. Second thing, if we are asked to give the name of the admin of a page that runs some news, of course we cannot do it. For obvious GDPR and privacy reasons, we cannot do it. But then there is an implemented process, MLAT related, and this is all fully transparent. If you have a legitimate court order, or if you have a legitimate request from a prosecutor, then it's analyzed in a totally different way. But such requests from a politician that is in campaign, well, yes, there are rules, and we do act in line with the law that we have in place.
Ona, I just want to ask you, because the elections are approaching next year. We'll have European elections in May. So normally elections time is always the time where something happens, as mentioned in the case of Poland even. What would you recommend? Because Professor Zybertowicz is calling for kind of a cooperation of different institutions. What would be your recommendations from the analytical work you are doing to protect our democracies from at least external intervention?
Well, and that kind of brings me to the notes I was making when my co-panelists were speaking. We absolutely need something that's called the whole of society approach. And you were proposing a question that we should try to ask. I would propose an alternative one, which is, how do we adjust the instruments of our democracy to the world that we live in today, not yesterday? Because just to look at a few very basic things, there's regulation for offline campaigns, and there's no regulation for online campaigns, or very little of it. Just to give you an example, if you distribute leaflets or posters during a campaign, they have to mention who's paying for that, and the circulation of the respective leaflets, at least in Romania. There is no such requirement for online ads. So I think it's more taking stock and understanding where we are and adjusting the instruments of democracy. And that being said, there is something that's really new when it comes to the truth value, which after all is at the basis of democracy, because in a representative democracy you delegate your vote, so you delegate decision-making powers to somebody you hope is going to make informed decisions in your favor based on evidence. Now, a recent study by the RAND Corporation that's called Truth Decay shows that we had moments of industrial revolution before. We had the radio, we had the printing press, and so on. At no such time in the past was there such blatant disagreement between opinions and facts and data. So that's the new thing. People are forming opinions not on the basis of evidence, but on the basis of emotions and trust in others and so on and so forth. And that's where I'm not satisfied, to tell you the truth, with the Facebook answer, which I think a lot of your colleagues have been putting forth recently, that you're hiring more people. Well, on the one hand, because machines will fight machines, people will not be able to process fast enough. But secondly, it's a matter of business model, because the business model of online platforms is based on quantity, not quality. And I think that's something Facebook actually acknowledges, and there are steps in that direction. But basically, you as an individual, you get followers, you get reach, you get visibility, so you are validated by your circle of friends, even if they're virtual friends, on the basis of how many shares you have, of how many likes you have, of how many followers you have, not on the basis of quality. That's not something new. I mean, our politicians get votes not necessarily because they're the best or the smartest, but because they have managed to convince more people. And so, you know, I mean, selling illusions and so on is as old as time. What's new is the scale and the speed and with which these things are happening, and the fact that it's easier now, especially for those who are able to process large quantities of data as online platforms, to carve the electorate, the public, and to tailor those ads. And when you think of an elections campaign, the rule on TV is that you have to bring at least, you know, both, let's say, parties or all parties. So you need to have viewers confronted with one opinion and with the opposite. When you're sitting in front of your screen and ads are targeted at you, that's a private conversation between you and whoever is behind the news. You are not exposed to debate. You are not exposed to difference. So that actually makes you vulnerable, especially if sitting behind those ads is your own government or a foreign government or an organization that has resources way beyond what you have as an individual to protect yourself. So I think that's why as long as you have a business model that's based on quantity and not quality, that's going to be a problem. It's also going to be a problem for platforms to change that business model, because that means losing money. And on the other hand, that's why I think we need a whole of society approach. This is a conversation that no one has the answers to yet. This is a conversation where you need the tech platforms, where you need civil society, and I think you know, unfortunately, the institutions of our democracy, like I said, political and government and administrative, are not adapted, are not reformed for the online era. So we expect that a lot of the answers are actually going to come from outside of those institutions. A lot of the challenges come from outside, a lot of the answers are going to come from the outside. And one of the important things to retain is that those of us who are having this debate here, you know, just if I look around, although I'm having trouble seeing in the room, but we are mostly in the age range of what, above 30 and up to, I don't know, 70 or whatever. I'm afraid that kind of means we might be falling in the middle, and we might not understand very well either the millennials and whatever the other generations are called that are so much younger, who are natural users of technology, or people like my mother, for instance, who are using Facebook, are using email, but that doesn't make them tech savvy. It just makes it just opens up a channel for manipulation that they don't know how to resist. So this is really a conversation that needs to be all-encompassing and needs to involve everyone in society, and it's a process, really. It's not, we don't have the answers at this point.
So maybe it's something similar to what happened with the mankind when the car was invented. When, you know, everybody started to have a car and drive, and then suddenly it maybe, you know, it was obvious that we needed some regulations on the roads, right?
And by the way, and I promise to close with that, this is a lot of what the internet is doing is selling people comfort. You were talking, I think, about advertising and so on. They're selling people comfort, they're selling people the possibility to sit on the couch and reach out to the world and have the world come to them. And we as human beings have trouble resisting comfort. And very often, I mean, if you're going to be able to ask Google anything from what kind of house or car they recommend for you, or food or whatever, you will do it. I mean, it saves you time, it saves you effort, and so on. And that's something that, you know, Aldous Huxley was writing about in his book Brave New World. It's easier to manipulate people by giving them happiness and selling them comfort than by torturing them and you know, promoting an autocracy or a dictatorship. So this is going to be a hard-fought battle, because it also fights with kind of the natural human tendency, and so it's going to take a lot of both education and I think also regulation, because that's something. I used to be a journalist, and as a journalist I've always said, hands off the media, don't regulate free speech, because whatever you do, it verges on censorship very easily. But now I'm thinking, look, and again, I talked earlier about the multiple ways in which we as individuals are vulnerable in front of something that's new to us too. Well, if you're protecting kids against internet porn or pedophilia or bullying or whatever, in many ways, adults are also vulnerable. But again, that's a conversation to have, because at the same time, I wouldn't want as a citizen to be treated either by my government or whoever else as being this disabled, vulnerable person who needs somebody telling them what is right and what is wrong, because that kind of goes against any principle of democracy.
That's really a Greek dilemma. Before I give the floor back to Facebook, I would like to see if there is any comment or question from the floor. We hardly can see anything from here, but I will try to do my best to see you.
I'm Maciej Milczanowski. I came from Rzeszów University, it's southeast Poland. And I would like to propose something, because we are thinking about fighting the fake news by the system. So we are looking for solutions in the system, in the government or so on. And what Mr. Pomianowski said was very important, that the let's say, enemy is building the trust instead of regarding the truth. And that comes to the commercials, the same as the leaders like Putin or others. And shouldn't we build our answer on the contrary, not building the trust to our leaders, but questioning the truth, questioning the trust. Other words speaking, to teach the kids, the youth, of the critical thinking instead of those traditional learning of how to obey to the rulers, to the authorities. So, in my opinion, right now we are using very old models of learning our kids and young people. I'm a teacher in the university, so when I try to open mind of the young people, it's a very hard work, because they just want to learn from the book, answer and forget. And okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have another one, and let's take all of them, maybe to give the chance the panelists to take them all on one go.
Jarosław Włodarczyk, I'm from Polish Press Club, and two short questions. One to Mrs. Popescu. You said about the research you had about the, let's call it, resistance to the propaganda, and because we experienced the propaganda in the past time. So my question is, what were the findings in the group of under 25 who didn't experience that? And to Mr. Turowski, you mentioned about the... I agree with Professor Zybertowicz that you benefit from fake news, for sure. And the presentation about the deepfake, you will be probably the only channel or social media will be the only channel to spread it. If someone will produce deepfake without Facebook or Twitter or other platforms, would never use it. So that's how you benefit from it. But my question is...
If they know it's fake.
No, I mean in general, the fake news or deepfake would not exist without distribution of it. So my question is, you said about the certification and the fact checkers, but you don't pay them. You don't share your wealth to verify information.
We do. It is a paid service.
No. I know a group of minimum two groups of journalists in Poland who were in talks with Polish Facebook, and you refused to pay for it, so to finance it.
So when it comes to the fact checkers with whom we partner and who have the pointer certificate, we do pay for the service they do provide. Now you, as a citizen, as a Facebook user, can always become a fact checker.
I'm talking about the institutional fact-checking organization.
Then I confirm that we do.
Okay, so you do. And the last question is coming to you. Why Facebook was against the copyright regulation on the single digital market, which was actually giving more wealth to the media, which are maybe not finding always the truth, what Mr. Pomianowski said, but are verifying information and increasing the trust.
Before you answer,
Thank you.
I think there was one more question.
Hello, Dumitru Alaiba from CPR Moldova, actually previous grantee of European Endowment for Democracy. I just wanted to perhaps mention that, well, without Facebook, we would probably have no voice at all. Just apparently, the whole discussion ended up with Facebook. So without Facebook, we would be 6 people against almost authoritarian government with practically unlimited resources and administrative, financial and whatnot. So that's important to note, because there are merits that social media has brought to discourse, to public discourse, to pluralism after all. However, I mean, just from your arguments, we are still, and me personally, I think it's important we sort of replicate to the maximum extent possible all the rules that we have in real life to replicate them online. So, I mean, us being basically anti-corruption NGO, we obviously are for full transparency, sometimes even radical transparency. So when you say that you cannot publish the names of the administrators of the pages, us being fully supporting transparency of ownership of companies, transparency of taxation, of fiscal transparency and whatnot, I cannot disagree with this. Or especially when it comes to promoted ads, we are speaking about fake news and fake pages. We have real politicians promoting and paying for fake information to be to keep infecting our vulnerable societies. That's important to factor in. And in this about this last thought, we don't even have full access to how much they spent on these ads, and we can only imagine these are tremendous amounts of money. I mean, I understand when we speak about commercial secret, but when it comes to politics, we are convinced that this information somehow should be available public, at least from the past. This could be quite a blow to illicit money being funneled into promoted ads.
Thank you very much. We have two more and we have to stop here. Yes, please.
Hello, thank you very much for the good comments. I'm Dimitar, Program Officer at the European Institute of Peace, Peace and Conflict Resolution Organization based in Brussels. And my question is actually looking at the space for alternative narratives that has to be created in post-conflict countries, and more concretely, what can be the role of the private sector, but also tech companies such as Facebook, in proactively promoting the creation of such space that brings over alternative narratives to countries which do not have space for these debates in terms of future state building, which are facing building the future structure of their society in a post-conflict context. Thank you.
Yeah. Hello, thank you. Dalia Bankovskaite, Lithuania, SIPA. Thank you for all your thoughts. My question to all of you about media. The world is changing. A lot of challenges you mentioned. The mainstream media, social media, regular one. What should be the requirements to the current media, Western media? I would argue that it should no longer be just balanced. He reported, she said, he said, keeping balance. It should be an open one, more explaining and really putting on the narratives and positive narratives. It's about trust and truth. But I would appreciate your opinion. And second, are you aware of this NATO Stratcom research on Facebook? They launched an experiment. Actually, they did the advertisement exercise, purchased the advertisement service from the Facebook, and they looked afterwards, they defined the task, and they looked how well targeted it was. It turned out that there was quite a lot of fake accounts, or not relevant, not meeting but nevertheless, Facebook charged them. So, of course, Stratcom paid it. They lost certain thousands of euros because that was an experiment. If you say that Facebook cannot check the content, which might be true, why not to charge their clients for the accounts that are not really, they are fake accounts, not valid or missing the target, not relevant.
And the last one, because I forgot the gentleman behind, just quick one and we get back.
Yeah, very quickly, my name is Ronan Murphy. I'm the Chief Executive of a cybersecurity company. And I want to make an observation. When you look at micro-targeting using social media platforms, it's nothing new. Politicians have been micro-targeting forever, but now they've a broader platform to do it. What's profoundly scary about this is the lack of knowledge from governments and from leaders globally, because when the Cambridge Analytica scandal broke, we had known about that in the industry forever. For the last 2 or 3 years, we'd been writing blogs about how this was happening and how it had happened in Nigeria and how it's happening with a new iteration of Cambridge Analytica in Brazil. And it'll continue to happen. So I don't believe that building algorithms or hiring 10,000 people will ever stop that. It's going to be about education. It's going to be about educating the leaders and the governments, and probably the most astonishing hour of my life was when Mark was in Congress and you saw the delta in knowledge between the senators and Mark and their complete lack of understanding of how these platforms work. So I think it was Ms. Popescu, sorry if I did mispronounce your name, said it while she was speaking, but I do fundamentally believe it's about education, because democracy versus big data is going to win every day.
Thank you so much. And now, please give the short answers. Jakub, maybe we'll start with you.
So there's been a lot of topics here. The first one, the gentleman from Rzeszów. Of course, we may build all the tools that we want. We will never win it if there is no education, and this is an absolute key aspect. Only 2 weeks ago, we launched a huge counter fake news campaign on Facebook with the Polish press agency. The aim being to reach every single user of Facebook on Facebook, just to raise awareness with a hands of tips, so that really to show that every single user can become a fact checker, really, right? So it's really about raising awareness that, hey dude, all that you read is not necessarily true. Be careful on the source, be careful on the title, be careful on the date, be careful on everything. But, and of course we do so, and we try to do it as in an as efficient and scalable way as possible. But we will not win this battle on our own, and we need governments, we need NGOs, we need other partners to win this battle, because the education will not only come from the tech companies. And then I will be a bit provocative, because on one hand we say governments, administration, and the other hand we say politicians. But I mean, these are the same people, and the politicians, they use our platform in a lot of ways, not always nice. So we also have to understand that the decision makers are not always like saints in this process. Now, coming back to what my co-panelist was saying, first of all, I fully agree that transparency is maybe one of the biggest challenge here, especially ads transparency, especially political ads transparency. People need to know why they have an ad in front of them and who posted it. And here we're doing our homework. In June, we launched the View All Ads tool that allows everybody to know if there is, what are the ads run by a page. There is much more to come, and some things have been announced for the midterms here in the United States. We aim for the European elections to have much more tools here, but I will go further. Maybe indeed there is need for more regulation in terms of ads transparency during political campaigns. I'm working on Latvia, and there they have a pre-election bill, and then indeed it's much more regulated, and maybe this is the answer, absolutely. Answering to the absolutely not related copyright directive question, we are not against. We are maybe not fully in line with what has been voted in the parliament, because you do have to find the right balance between, on one hand, the fact that creation has to be monetized, and we fully agree with this. And we do have proactively very efficient tools to fight with all that is not in line with IP and with copyright. But on the other hand, regulations have also to acknowledge the fact that people create online by their own, and the current form of Article 13 is just going a bit too far. But that's really for another debate. To answer the last question, well, yes, of course, we are in contact with Stratcom, as we are with many, many other institutions, and this is where I'm saying that we cannot win this battle alone, and we need all sorts of NGOs and experts to help us in it. And what the study showed is that there is an issue of fake accounts. Well, precisely, this is what we're trying to fight using AI more and more. I mean, daily we remove over 1 million fake accounts in our platform. It's just to show you the scale of the phenomenon. All I can tell you is that we do much better than we did in the past. But yes, again, it's an ongoing battle.
Thank you. Anna? Education, absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying. And but let me just, burst your bubble a little bit. We're really bad at doing this. It's very nice to say we need more education, but is this the first time we're finding out that we need to teach critical thinking? Or has this been around for decades and we have not done it, at least not in Europe, not as much as we should? So I think the question is, either we get serious about this and we understand that this is really now a vital thing, or else we're going to just do the same thing that we've done so far, which is to acknowledge the need of teaching critical thinking, but not do it. The reason it's vital now is that I think There's a fundamental shift. You don't need to teach people, to give people information so much, because they have it. It's easily accessible. You have to help people make sense of how much information is around and tell them what's relevant and what's not, and teach them flexibility. Teach them, you know, when I got into school, it was much easier for my parents to foresee what the world would look like by the time I graduated, so it was relatively easy to decide what kind of skills I needed. I don't know, foreign languages, maths, computers, and so on. For kids now, when they go into first grade, it's so hard to predict what the world is going to look like when they graduate. So we really need to teach them flexibility, and we need to teach them how to learn, but I'm afraid we are not prepared and we don't know those things. So it's really something that requires a huge amount of investment, and it requires a huge amount of collaboration, including with tech platforms. And it also requires that we don't forget about adult education. And the reason I'm saying this is that you brought in the elections of next year. It's good if we teach young people, but they're more natural with technology, and they're not the ones who turn out to vote in great numbers. The ones who do turn out to vote are actually those that are not the target of education campaigns, and that's where I think we should focus a lot more than we are, because they're the ones who are deciding what kind of governments are going to be regulating the internet starting tomorrow. When it comes to our study on vulnerabilities to propaganda and subversion, it's called Propaganda Made to Measure. You can find it on our website, is www.global-focus.eu. What we chose to do was to take a demand-side approach. So we acknowledged that a lot of what's happening, the bad things that are happening to us are happening because we're leaving resilience gaps open that invite aggression, either from our own governments or from nationalists, from radicals, from foreign states, and so on. Very few words about the findings. Social cleavages and the lack of redistribution, not just of wealth, but also of power. So the extent to which individuals in our societies are feeling empowered, and they're feeling that like they're citizens that can exercise their rights or not. And we have huge polarization in our societies, and that opens up the road to exploitation from outside. The political class is unrepresentative. Political parties have stopped representing their electorates, so that's a big problem because people are going to the fringes. They're not satisfied with the mainstream anymore. Economic corruption is a big factor, of course, that's fueling this. And in terms of security in our region, it's really unfortunate that the permanent East-West balance and the difficulty in adjusting to that are really adding to the challenges. Just very briefly on the other questions, the media. I think we haven't spoken enough of the necessity for someone to also tell people how to restore trust. It's fine if you tell people they shouldn't trust everything they read, but how do you tell people what they can trust? And I think that's really, there's a necessity for revamping the business model of journalism, because we actually need someone that we can really trust on the basis of objective criteria. There is a big danger when you have the President of the United States tweeting, and that's not a fake account. That's a real person behind this, and it's a damn important person. So when you have this, there is a big danger that journalism itself is turning increasingly militant, even if it's you know, on the right side, let's say, of things. So there's actually a need for objective journalism where news is separated from opinion, and that restores criteria that have always been there to help people restore trust in institutions.
Oma, we have to stop here.
And my closing remark will be on tech platforms. Absolutely, I think, you know, I mean, don't just bash Facebook and Twitter and Google, because they're going to be the ones that are going to be bringing a lot of the solutions. And also, I think when you speak about transparency, it's a really nice word, but it's also helping China and Saudi Arabia target their own citizens. So I think it's not as easy as that. I don't know if you want your data floating around freely on social media just for the sake of transparency. So that's also a debate to have.
I think we should have really Warsaw Education Forum, not only Security Forum. Professor Zybertowicz and then Jerzy.
Historically and sociologically speaking, I'm afraid that the window for critical thinking is just closing down. From the ancient times, only a tiny minority of humans had analytical capacities of critical thinking. And now with the rise of democracies and so on, we hope that we can educate virtually everybody to possess this capacity. But all this technological revolution, including the Facebook and our tech giants, it destroys the need for any critical thinking. That consumer society doesn't match critical thinking. Consumer society is not compatible with quality journalism. Probably we cannot have both.
Well, that's quite opposite to what Ona said, I think, and what we would need. Okay, last word goes to
I hope it's
Jerzy.
not last word and not on the cross. So let's.
So let's just put two kind of ideas that I simply noted. First, I would definitely stick in a general message to what endowment does. We support civil society and we strongly believe in civil society. And I think it's the best answer to many of the problems that you addressed today. If we can have 5 people that can build trust of 50 people simply through the small circle, and there is another 5 people who build the trust with another 50 people. This is the way how small circles build to the bigger circle. We have to go back to the origin of democracy, and we don't need to read even Tocqueville to understand that this is the only way. And when the people go back to their direct relations, they can build both trust and they can transmit true messages. The second is a bigger problem that is concerning political elites. If they really care about society and democracy, they should find a way to combine truth with the strong emotions, because as I said, in today's world, you can't sell anything without emotion. So in that sense, I agree that quality journalism has limited reach. And there is definitely a limit where the quality journalism can persuade and make people think of evidence and then make them to make choices based on evidence. That's definitely in today's world difficult. So if there are elites who cares about the future of democracy and the future of their society, they should be able to combine truth with emotions. Let me give example of recent discussion about vaccination of children in Poland. Vaccination of children, you have a strong anti-vaccination movement who uses a lot of fake information. And here is a simple thing. If you don't base your choice about vaccination of your children on truth, that they need to, they will die. So this is a strong emotion, the fear that is attached to the fact-based and the truth-based evidence. We should try to rebuild this kind of relation. And finally, on big data versus democracy and the role of governments, I will generally put a least expectation on government in this regard. In principle, we should not expect too much from governments. I just give you an example, a totally different sector. Anti-bribery convention was only established in the 90s. And before that, for example, in Belgian tax legislation, if you were bribing a foreign official to get a good contract in Africa, you can put this on your account. And it was fully legal, and it was not even tax-free. So, in a sense, we should understand that the changing of government practices is always pushed from inside, not by themselves. From its society that elects government should request changes, not the government by themselves.
Unfortunately, we could discuss it many more hours. The time is over. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you, panelists. Please just give them applause. And I would add to the list just one word, common sense. I think that's very useful in this world of today. And the little thing we are doing, it's this website you are having here, informationwarfare.csm.org.pl. And of course the work also Ona is doing in the Global Focus Center. So just at least, you know, this is the starting point. If you can just see examples of this fake misinformation practices, you can go on these sites. Thank you very much and see you, I hope, next year for another discussion, because that will be definitely discussed. Thank you.